Hello everybody. So for you property owners, this is Noxious Weed Education Day. So we're going to see some examples of noxious weeds here in Spokane County, Washington, and just why they're noxious and about the laws regarding these plants and some eradication methods and just why we have such a problem here. So first off, the early migrants, the early settlers brought some of their favorite plants with them, seed packets, and brought them here to the United States because they were beautiful, resilient plants that they wanted in their garden, right? Yeah, some of them have a medicinal value, so you're going to see some examples of that. But we're going to talk about why it's a problem. And landlords in particular, okay, you need to nip these plants in the bud. We're going to talk about that dynamic as well and why it is so important, okay? So let's take a look at some of the species I have and what is going on here and just why they're considered noxious and illegal to have in your yard. So first we have common bug loss, and you can see it here. And you can see why someone would want this in their yard, right? If you like gardening, wouldn't you want that in your yard? It's gorgeous, huh? Yeah, it's a beautiful plant. It has great habitat value because bees absolutely love it. So when it comes to settling in this country, you can see why someone would want this here. It's incredibly resilient. This climate is pretty harsh. Like, for example, this winter we got to -10 with a -30 wind chill, and that's pretty harsh. And we freeze down 6 to 12 inches here, solid. So it's a pretty harsh environment. We have a lot less humidity here than states that are further inland as well. So we're like 5 inches shy of desert here. But here is why it is considered noxious. Now, this plant has a basal rosette pattern, as you can see here. So at the base of the plant, it has a gathering of leaves. Now, plants have different ways to reproduce and outcompete surrounding vegetation. And one of them is called allelopathy, and that is where the plant puts out actual chemicals to kill surrounding plants. And here in Eastern Washington, diffuse and Russian knapweed was brought over by the Russian population. Knapweed is a beautiful plant. Honestly, I would want that in my yard. So we have that out here. It is illegal because it does destroy and kill off all surrounding plants via chemical. So the tactic that bug loss uses that's so devastating is this is a perennial weed. So it's going to come back every year, but it's going to die in the fall. And so these leaves are really, really moist. Look at that. They're really wet. And what happens is they die back and lay their leaves down in a dense mat and kill everything around them in a dense mat via rotting and lack of photosynthesis, right? But then to add insult to injury, look at all these seeds. You've got thousands of seeds per head, right? So it lays down a mat, rots, kills everything around it, and adds insult to injury that feeds and insulates its seeds, right? So here we go. Here's it in action. See how rotted out that is? That was lawn, and it's not anymore. Yeah, not good. So that is how this plant outcompetes everything around it. And again, nothing here in the United States eats this plant. There are no insects to parasitize it, munch down its leaves. There are no predators like herbivores to come and eat them and keep them in check because they're not in their native habitat. So that's a problem. And we are big in agriculture out here in Washington State, a big grower. And one of the things that we are really big about is feed and grain crops, your cereal crops. Like, we are the wheat capital of the states, basically, and we grow our apples with pride. So one thing that bug loss does is you can see how it's destroying the lawn, right? Well, imagine if you get this in your hay or alfalfa, what's going to happen, right? So it is so watery that if this gets into your hay or alfalfa, it is destroyed. It will rot. Your cattle will not eat it. They will actually get irritated, foam at the mouth. So your entire crop is destroyed if you get bug loss in it. Yeah, so not good. So you can see here how it has invaded my yard. And let's take a look at how. So this is a rental property, and she kind of let it go to garbage. And she decided that she would give them cheap rent, her tenants, if they took care of the yard. Mind you, she did not supply them with anything to take care of the yard. So this entire thing was thick with bug loss. And you can see what it does here. This was brand new lawn, right? And so, unfortunately, she did pass. But the fellow that took over, I believe it was her cousin, he watched me for years try and battle her problem and keep it at bay and protect my yard. So every year I would spend my money and my weed whacker cord and spray and whack all of this bug loss, the entire thing, to try and protect my property, right? And that's my money. And I asked him over and over again, can you please do something about it? Because it is illegal to let these plants go to seed like that. And year after year, they did. Because honestly, what tenant wants to come out here, a weed whack, and spray in the 100-degree heat, you guys? No, landlords do not do that to your tenants, okay? You are decreasing the property value of surrounding homes, okay? And you don't have the right to do that, all right? So this is not a tenant problem. This is a landlord problem. So get out here, pay someone, DIY, I recommend, and nip these things in the bud, right? So you can see how it has invaded. So fortunately, the new landlord is taking it seriously. He watched me battle it for years. He came in, is taking over, and yay. Now that he has controlled the source, I can finally take care of this and be effective, because you can see how isn't effective. You really can't be. And so here is one method that you can do with the bug loss. I have a trenching shovel, and because my lawn is garbage, it doesn't really matter. So you can get these yearlings. These are the baby plants. So this is a yearling right here, and it's just a little guy, and they're a little bit vulnerable, right? And I am going to just stick my trenching shovel in there, and this is rocky soil. That's not going to work there, but let's see if I can get this one. There we go. And just pull that up. And there you go. I may not have gotten enough root, but the good thing about the bug loss is because it's all watery, if you break up that root and you get them while they're little, they're probably not coming back. But once they become their second year, like these, that taproot is huge. And these taproots can go down a whopping 7 feet. Now, when it comes to herbicides, these are resistant, hence noxious. You can spray this with Roundup and it is not going to be effective. It will appear to kill it like it did in the neighbor's yard, but because of that taproot, that's where the energy is, and it will come right back up. All you've done is kill the foliage, but the energy is in the root and it just regenerates, right? So that is a big problem. Yeah. So this entire thing was bug loss, and I was just done trying to deal with my neighbor's problem. So this was a protective measure I took, unfortunately, against my neighbors. This was all bug loss all through here. And so solarization is a method, and that's kind of what I've got going here. Not only am I protecting my property from the seeds, but solarization is a 1-2 punch, right? So when it comes to eradicating these plants, you can't just use one method. Now I can dig up these yearlings, right? And it's gone. But as you can see, yikes. Now this whole thing is going to be contaminated with seeds. And the seeds stay in the soil for 10 years or more, folks. So my entire lot, my neighbors have allowed my entire lot to be infested and contaminated. So unless I take measures to kill the seeds, they're deep within the soil, and I can till the soil, I can dig everything up all I want, and it's just going to keep coming back and keep coming back, okay, you guys? Because there are thousands of seeds per seed head, right? Yeah. So here with solarization, there was a woman who did an experiment when it comes to solarization. And what you do is you till the soil up and get it wet and then cover it with plastic, seal that off. And they recommended clear plastic because the theory was that it would have like a magnifying glass effect, which seems like it would do a really good job, right? Well, this woman did black plastic versus clear plastic side by side, and just as I figured, it has a 1-2 punch, right? Because not only are you cooking, but you are also blocking out all photosynthesis, right? Boom. Now the difference between the clear and the black plastic, of course, is that black absorbs heat and it holds on to it. Your clear plastic is going to radiate heat at night right back out and cool down. Black is going to trap it and seal it in all night because this is going to get hotter. The sun comes down and that black traps it, especially if you use concrete, because that will absorb the sun's energy and radiate and burn all night too. Okay, so don't do the clear plastic, do the black plastic. So unfortunately my yard is a mess because I kind of had to give up. As long as the entire alley and the entire side yard was being neglected by landlords, I couldn't get anywhere. I can use herbicides on my lawn all I want, but I'm going to have to keep using them, keep using it. And it's expensive simply because my neighbors are the source, right? The landlords are the source. So that is one way that is effective that farming uses anytime you have blight. I do have blight too, unfortunately. Solarization kills the seeds in the soil. You do kind of have to re-till it and be sure, but it really doesn't take that long. This is here for years as a protective measure. I just can't deal with it, with this being all bug loss, right? That's not fair. Don't do that, landlords. Don't do that, neighbors, please. These bug loss here, this is how dense it used to be. Is this just nothing but bug loss? I sprayed this for 2 years. The Roundup kills it. It came back, right? So not effective. You have to use multiple methods again. So noxious weeds are called that because it takes generally 2 seasons to eradicate them. And here you can see the bug loss coming right through the plastic, right? So I can just take that plant, tuck it under the plastic, and boom, it's fried. So this entire thing is fried, but the seeds are still there. Yeah. And so let's come over and talk about another weed. This one will respond to digging when it's young. But we have another landlord issue introducing another species. And this is rush skeleton weed. And this is from Africa. It's really tough and woody, right? So this is brand new, but it puts out some thorny spikes in between here. Ugh. It has a real milky substance in it. Nothing will eat this because it is bitter, it is slimy, and it is tough. So another thing we do out here is cattle. Now imagine if this gets into your alfalfa or something like that with those spikes and woody stems. Ugh. Now the one thing about this plant that the bug loss does not have, again, you can see the basal rosettes, right, is its method of regenerating. Now, just like we talked about the bug loss, where the taproot, it can regenerate, this one you cannot pull. Do not try and pull rush skeleton weed, because just like the stems get all woody, so does the roots. Unlike the bug losses that has a big, squishy, sensitive root that will fray and rot and a little bit easier to dig up, this one, because it's from Africa, it has a woody taproot that is very small and thin and spindly, so that it can work its way deep down 7 feet into our rocky soil. This plant, if you miss any of the taproot when you dig this up, any bit of the taproot splits at the top when it heals and puts out satellites. And so you get tons of baby plants coming out from that original root if you do not get every single scrap of that root. So do not pull this. Okay, do not, because you are going to make the problem 1,000 times worse. Now, that woody taproot makes it even harder to control with herbicides. Very resilient plant. And this one does have medicinal value. So I'm not sure what they do with it, but that's why they brought it over. Plus, I mean, look at it. It does really, really well here. Now, when it comes to the landlord issue, this entire thing, again, is a rental. And this entire thing was rush skeleton weed all along the garage. And the tenant has been, she doesn't really like us because we've asked her to please come out and take care of it, because it is illegal. I repeat, it is illegal to allow these plants to go to seed and spread all over people's yards, and I'll show you why in a minute, why it's so bad. But this entire thing was rush skeleton weed. And so this entire lot, again, this is thistle and stuff coming from the neighbors. This entire lot was dead. I pitchforked up this entire thing last year, and there was nothing alive. And you can see how not effective that was, because it's in the soil. I pitchforked up all of this bug loss last year. I used a pitchfork, I pulled them out by the root and got all the root, but you can see the soil is completely contaminated with seeds. I can dig and I can dig and I can dig, and it's going to keep coming back. And this is not my property. All of this is theirs. So again, I did the black plastic to just keep that at bay. I just got exhausted trying. So sorry, my lot is a mess. Here you can see the rush skeleton weed and how it just is prolific. So not only did I get the bug loss seeding, but you can see every year I got more and more rush skeleton weed, because that tenant did not want to get out in the 100-degree heat and whack her landlord's noxious weeds for him. And noxious weeds you have to throw in the garbage. You cannot, I repeat, not put them in the yard waste bin, because those taproots can regenerate, because there can be seeds trapped in their leaves, right? So every year from the alley, I got more and more and more. And I asked her, hey, ask your landlord to come out and take care of it, because it's his problem if you don't want to. Please help us out here. And pretty much she went to the defensive and does not like us simply because we wanted to have nice yards, and it is flat illegal. So her landlord was breaking the law, and you can see why, right? Now, in its native habitats, it is going to have animals that eat it. Nothing likes this stuff. And so this gets into your cattle ranches. Your cattle can't eat this. They're not going to eat it. It's disgusting, right? There's no predators out here to control it. And so this gets into your cattle ranch and it spoils. It's called spoiling. And there you go. You're done. So what they're doing, one method of control is goats. and people bring in goats, and it is a very, very eco-friendly way to destroy weeds. But even the goats don't like the bug loss and the rush skeleton weed. So what they have been doing is slowly acclimating the goats to get a taste for it. And you know, these plants are irritating, so it's going to upset their stomachs, get caught in their throat, and so you slowly acclimate the plant or the animal to eating it. And so they're having some success with getting the goats to go after the bug loss and the skeleton weed. One thing that they have done for biocontrol is bring over one of its pests. I forget what it's called, but it's a midge, which is a tiny, tiny insect. And this midge parasitizes the flowers. It lays eggs on the flowers, which then goes in deep into the plant, stays dormant, but then when the plant goes to seed, it completely creates galls, and they devour the flower before it can go to seed, and they feed on the seeds, etc. So it ruins the sexual reproduction process of this plant. But if you touch those roots and try and pull it, the asexual reproduction takes over and it clones itself, right? So this is why it's illegal to allow this stuff to seed into your neighbor's yard, right? So these are two nasty species we have in Washington. Another really gross one is this geranium, and it does the same thing as the bug loss does. You can see here, look at how huge that is, right? I got it in my front lawn last year thanks to the landlord, and my front lawn was new and it was beautiful, and it is all dead. I have no lawn anymore, okay? And so you can see here, it's doing the same thing as the bug loss, only tenfold. Yeah, so there was lawn here, and there you go. It kills everything around it. And look at these seed spikes, right? Ugh, gosh. And so it lays down a dense, waxy, it's real waxy, and it has a strong odor. That's one way to identify it. And it insulates the seeds again, just like the bug loss, kills just like the bug loss. Yeah, this one is a little more woody. Don't try to dig it up. Just don't. Because of the sticky nature of its leaves, the herbicide is not going to cling to it as well. So you're going to want to trim off around here before you use the herbicide so that it can really get into the stems or some other method. But look at these seed spikes, right? And again, I mean, you can see why someone brought it over. It's got these beautiful little purple flowers. I mean, this one smells a little bit better as a geranium, but gosh, yeah. So what we also have here is field bindweed. I got that from over here, thanks. And you can see why it gets its name. It binds up your plants. I've let it grow and not mowed to show you what's going on here, but it winds around your plants like so. You can see it going up the stalks of the grass, right? And it has these wide leaves that block out the sun. Here's a great example. And it outcompetes the plant and chokes it, hence the term bind. It binds your plant up, and it will kill your entire garden and lawn. Now, this plant clones or reproduces and spreads asexually underground via stolon, which makes it particularly nasty. And so it's not going to be quite as sensitive to the herbicides, unfortunately, because it's just so tough and it just goes everywhere. And so this is one where you have to pretty much dig up your entire lot, unfortunately, and get all those stolons, pull up all those roots underground. It spreads via a long root underground. And I'm going to show you another species that does that as well. So field bindweed, okay? Don't let this stuff go, right? Yeah. Another one is that's just nasty. I don't know if it's actually classified anymore. Is lawn ivy. Let's see, where did I get some lawn ivy here? It's has kind of a woodier taproot I can't even find it in this mess of bindweed. But it can be another one that spreads out sideways and just destroys your lawn. So look up these plants. You can go to your county noxious weed sites and learn more about these plants, why they're devastating, and eradication methods. Now, another one we have out here is Japanese knotweed. Gorgeous plant. Again, I mean, it's a shade lover. It's huge. It's beautiful. Okay, and what the Noxious Weed Board taught me is if a weed has these big hollow stalks like that, you can cut them off like it did here and let it dry out a little bit. And you can actually dump your Roundup down the stalk. And that way it goes all the way down the stalk to the root, penetrates the root, and absolutely destroys the plant. Because with tap roots, of course, it gets on the leaves, but I have sprayed this numerous times, so there's an example. So part of the reason my yard is a mess is because I'm showing you guys just how this works. Another one that I've got that is a nasty spreader, this one is on watch, is creeping bellflower. I had one plant here, one plant in 2019, and here it is. Look at that. Oh, that creeping bellflower. Now, this is like the bindweed. It is going to put out stolons underground and spread asexually underground, cloning itself. It blocks out all the light in your lawn again. And this one's going to be a little more sensitive to your herbicides, fortunately. So your weed and feed will keep this one at bay better than it is the others because there is no taproot with this one. The roots are pretty fine. Puts on a little taproot, but it doesn't even go as deep as a dandelion. So it's going to be a lot more sensitive. But yeah, it takes over. So this one is on watch for being invasive. And again, it's beautiful. It's a shade lover. And it puts up these big stalks that come about yay high. And it has these gorgeous purple bells, hence the name bellflower, right? And it is beautiful. I would want this in my yard, but unfortunately nothing here controls it. And it just goes on and on and on. So I got that from over here, and they have it really bad over there. So this one isn't quite noxious yet, but as you can see, I really think it would be a good idea to list it as such because wow, in just 5 years it has completely taken over my yard. Yeah, so those are some of the dynamics that go on between private owners and rentals. Living next to a rental is really hard. Nobody really likes to do it, likes to be next to a rental. It brings down property values because it's just not fun. So landlords, please be diligent, and property owners, check your property every year for these little babies. And if you have a huge lot, nipping these babies early, these little yearlings with an herbicide when they're really small can be effective because they don't have that taproot going down. But that is not going to kill the seeds. That is not going to kill your adult plants. Okay? So, one thing I did was I did contact the county. The Noxious Weed Board, every state has one, like I said, and reported this problem and that it was coming from my neighbors' help. They won't do anything. These things are aggressively invading and ruining my yard, etc., etc. So in reporting that, I sent photographs, everything. It was documented for the government. Now, I got no response from Spokane County, so I called the state and said, hey, why aren't they doing anything about it? And the state said, well, Spokane County doesn't have the budget for it. Now, I don't know if this is Canada thistle, but that is something that farmers went and bought cheaper Canadian hay, and it had the seeds in it. And it came, and this is coming from over here. So here's why it's a problem. I dug this entire thing up last year. My entire lot, I dug up this entire thing. Nothing was alive here. But you can see that even though I dug them out successfully by the taproot all along here, which is not my property, the seeds are there. It doesn't do any good. They come back. Now, if you don't have an area, if you have an area that you don't have a lawn, you can put down preen, which is a pre-emergent herbicide, and it puts down a layer of a gas that prevents germination of seeds. When it rains, though, it goes into the soil and it's not effective. So you do have to use a lot of that. It doesn't solve the problems of the seeds constantly being there by the millions, right? So this entire lot was dug up. You can see some pigweed here. I did the black plastic because as a disabled homeowner, I am overwhelmed. So now I came out last week and there was an ugly smell. I thought it was the landlord next door spraying, but look at this. Look at that. Spokane County came through. So all of this was noxious weeds. All of it. And we were working our butts off trying to control these two landlords' problem, okay? That is not our responsibility to control their problem, to run out of our weed whacker cord, to pay for the gas to whack them, to pay for the chemicals, okay? And it is illegal. So thank you, Spokane County, for finally coming through and spraying the entire alley, because now one of the biggest sources of the problem has been controlled for us. Please keep tabs on that for us, Spokane County. Thank you so much. Any case, those are some species that I am dealing with and why they are considered noxious by the government. Again, it is illegal to let these things go to seed into people's yards, and you can see why. And those are some of the ways that these plants become an invasive problem. Now, bringing seeds from other countries, etc., of course, is now not legal. You can't order plant seeds. They have to be documented, sold via pot, etc., just because the problem is so huge. So another one I've got from both sides is quackgrass, and that's this nasty guy right here. And there's the seed. And quackgrass was brought here originally for animal feed, got out of control. So it does what the creeping bellflower does and reproduces asexually via stolons. So you can see how it's creeping into my yard. Now I have this on a slope so that at least when it tries to get under the fence, I can pitchfork it up. But you can see how we've got the bellflower that's going to go to seed and drop into my yard. We've got the bug loss that's going to go to seed and drop into my yard. So part of being a community is action. So when it comes to controlling and then eradicating noxious weeds, everybody must participate, okay? All it takes is one person to not participate for the problem to continue. All right, now I did offer to eradicate the weeds for this older couple and they refused. So look at that problem and how devastating that is for me. Yeah, and every year I come through here and pull out the quackgrass because I don't want these seeding into my yard. Okay, so another thing about the quackgrass and things that have stolons. Oh, look at that bindweed. That wasn't there last year, okay, guys? Under the fence. Thanks, neighbors. So some of these things that reproduce by stolon are going to be really aggressive and not sensitive to herbicides, etc. But you can see here that I used the 4-inch. And this stolon from this grass can dive down feet. It hits it and goes under it. So this was not effective, but I took 2 of them, and you can see here I used felt to hold the 2 together. So I have about 10 inches, 8 to 10 inches under there, but that is only temporary. I did offer to pitchfork this up for them. And I don't know why they refused, mind you, for free. So please, you guys, don't do this to your neighbors. It is a community. It's a lot of work. We all have to work together. And we just have the one person left who is refusing to get the free help from their neighbors and landlords. Get out to your property, please. This is not your tenant's problem. It is not your tenant's responsibility to get out here in the extreme heat and waste their time and their money whacking to prevent seed spread, pitchforking to dig up stolons, and spending their money on herbicides. Okay, that is not their problem. Don't do this, because again, you are decreasing the property value of owners that live around you. And unlike you, it is not out of sight, out of mind for us, is it? I want to have a nice garden, but this stuff is just going to keep coming into my yard. And it's a lot of work. I did offer to help. It's a shame they won't take advantage of it. So anyway, you guys, those are some of the things that we are battling here in Spokane County. And the rush skeleton weed has spread along to Idaho, where it's a really big problem. So please look for these plants in your yard, owners, and dig them up while they're babies. Routine herbicides are not going to really be that effective on these huge plants so long as someone is letting them go to seed. You're just going to have to spend so much money using herbicides to just try and keep those tough seeds at bay, right? This came from there. And she didn't want to get out in the heat. I don't blame her, but neither did her landlord, which is against the law. And you can see why. The devastation. So my entire brand new lawn is ruined. And I could have used herbicide to try to keep these plants at bay. And I don't even know that that would have been effective, given that the infestation was so severe. So severe. That entire thing was bug loss. Okay? Don't do that, you guys. This is illegal to allow these plants to spread. You can go to your county websites, look up noxious weeds, and they will give you a list of the particular plants in your area that you must contain, okay? Because these plants can devastate not just nature, not just lawns, right? But it can devastate our crops. And it's unfortunate. So biocontrol on this one was the midge that they brought in to parasitize the flowers to prevent the seed spread, but they had to bring them in. They had to import them, right? So that's a predator that they are trying desperately. They are trying to get the goats to get a taste for it. But this is particularly devastating. If you have the rust skeleton weed, do not pull it up, okay? Don't even try. Your noxious weed board will tell you what kinds of chemicals you can use. Again, getting these things out of your yard takes years, all right? It is hard work. So please, please, don't do what our neighbors here have done and let it invade people's yards and give them a huge problem to deal with, because again, it's against the law. So the county did finally come through and kill it along the alley, which was a huge favor, because rush skeleton weed gets woody, and that's our alley, and it will scratch up the paint of your car, right? So we had elderly and disabled people busting their buns trying to just keep this landlord's problem under control. Okay, please don't do that. So these are some examples for you and why plants are noxious. We have Russian and diffuse knapweed that has the allelopathy. It was sensitive to herbicide, so unfortunately I do not have a sample to show you, because I did spray my first year, and unlike everything else, it did die quickly. But the rush skeleton weed and the bug loss, no. Your standard Roundup and things like that do not work. With the rush skeleton weed, you cannot dig it up. It doesn't work. So there you have it, you guys. What a noxious weed is, why it's noxious. and what you can do about it, some different methods, and of course the property owner dynamic. Landlords, do not put in your lease that your renters are to take care of your property, okay? Because they're not going to want to get out here in the heat. That's your job, to get a crew or anything and come out here like he did and take care of this problem, okay? This is a neighborhood. It doesn't matter that you don't live here. You are part of this neighborhood, landlords, all right? Get it together. Notice these plants. Be a part of your community. Don't let this kind of stuff happen. Okay? Just don't, please. So there you have it. That's a wrap. And take care, you guys. Note these plants. Don't get scammed.